Times better, Piszczuk hissed. My guests were reluctant to leave my canvases, but they followed Piszczuk's urging and went upstairs. Half an hour later, Bogusz and Kajetan stumbled down the stairs, completely drunk. It's a terrible shame that everything ended so quickly. Do not worry. The party has just begun. I was right. A few minutes later, my guests were back. Adam was too busy pouring glasses of vodka while I distributed the pickles. Later that evening, a tall American sat down beside me on a bench. My name is Bernard Davis, he said. I'm the president of the Museum of Modern Art in Miami. I'll buy the whole lot. Bogusz almost had a stroke. Kajetan was too drunk to react. Piszczuk ran away. The following day, Bernard Davis turned up at my house. After examining my pictures closely, he chose 20 of the best, including the one I had shown the night before. He paid me $2,000 American. Exchanging that on the black market meant I could live well for a year. Having been denied the opportunity to exhibit my works at the Corte Carta, I decided to stage my own exhibition. The ideal site, I decided, would be the BARBAKAN, a reconstructed wall in Warsaw that joined the old city with the new. All I needed now was someone to assist me, preferably a young painter like Waldemar or Janis. I arranged to meet Waldemar at He showed up early in the morning with 10 of his canvases, some nails, and a hammer. Except for the two of us, there was not a soul to be seen along the BARBAKAN. I had already marked out the spots where the paintings were to hang. After I had pointed these out, Smolarek began to hammer the nails into the brick wall. I hung up my latest works. In painting them, I had mostly used a palette knife. Listening to the music of Miles Davis and John Coltrane, I had laid down restless, vibrant stains that created an interesting play on the polished surface of my canvas. Succulent black lines dominated, but occasionally a zinc white or a cobalt blue made an appearance. Hanging on the BARBAKAN and lit by the rising sun, these paintings looked spectacular. When the sun moved overhead and began to burn, Smolarek and I relocated to a bench under the shade of an enormous tree and waited for our customers. The first to appear was a mother with 2 children. Then came a nun in a black habit, 2 policemen, and a fellow with earphones on. Over the next 2 hours, about 200 people turned up, including a number of KGB types with their telltale, conspicuous gray suits, a large woman from the magistrate's office, and the chairman of the Warsaw branch of the Polish Association of Visual Arts, Ted Gronowski. Zbigniew, what do you think you're doing here? I just had a phone call from the Central Communist Party asking me to find out what in God's name was going on here. Then, as he looked around at the pictures, a smile appeared on his face. There's no denying that these colors knock you out. There will be a bit of commotion around here, but that's a good thing. As I watched his tall figure walk away, I detected the scent of his fine cologne hanging in the air. Then I turned my attention to my canvases. One, I noticed, needed adjustment. The wind had blown it off balance. Before I could move to straighten it, I heard an unfamiliar voice. "Are you Mr. Kupczynski?" said a man with 2 cameras slung over his shoulder. I nodded. "May I take your picture?" he said. "Yes, by all means." He immediately began to click away. After taking a few dozen shots, the photographer bought one of my paintings, paying me $100 for a small abstract. "This picture reminds me of the field I saw from my window as a kid," he said before shaking my hand and quickly disappearing into the crowd. When I told Waldemar of my sale, I learned that he too had sold a painting. His buyer was a Swede from Malmö who had been happy to pay 500 crowns for a large abstract. It would not be long, Smolarek and I agreed, before Tom, popularly known as Fat Barrel, turned up to exchange our foreign money for Polish currency. Later that day, Janis turned up. He had been passing through the old city by chance and had stumbled upon a crowd of people having a heated discussion about art. Someone had mentioned the BARBAKAN, and he decided to investigate. He was surprised to find Smolarek and me there. You organized a show without me? What were you thinking of? The next morning he showed up with 10 of his own canvases. Each of these, though colored differently, featured a 1-foot square window cut out of the canvas and then sewn back in place with black or golden thread. I have come up with a new style, he bragged, having no idea that dozens of artists before him had done the same thing, including Miliares and Tapias.
Go ahead. Good.
In the following months, the exhibit at the BARBAKAN became a favored destination for tourists visiting Poland. The party bosses were disturbed by our success and unsure how to respond. Should they close down the show and throw us in the hole, or take advantage of our popularity by observing our visitors? Ordinary citizens were also upset. "Off to Siberia with them!" shouted a woman in a red cap. "Kiss my ass," whispered Nalivaiko in her ear. Different suspicious types began to hang around the BARBAKAN. Some played the part of tourists. Some pretended to be painters by hanging up scribbles of their own on the wall. Luckily, we had already taken the prime spots. A fellow we called Mozart, a skinny fellow in a felt hat, never abandoned his vigil. He had the typical gaze of a secret policeman. We knew him from an incident that had occurred in the basement of the well-known Polish actor Mark P., where we stored our paintings. Stone drunk, Mozart had threatened a woman named Magda with a pistol because, despite his offer of a substantial amount of money, she had refused his request for sex. Opponents of what we were doing at BARBAKAN, including Comrade Wyszwanski, accused us of conducting a circus. In a sense, we were. Crowds of people flocked to see the spectacle, and not everything in the show was of good quality. My own work at the time was not always great. Even so, the abstract pieces I churned out sold well, to the constant irritation of my colleagues at the Polish Association of Visual Artists. One day in August, 2 girls showed up at the BARBAKAN. They had come to see the artists. I busied myself with the taller of the 2, who sat herself down on the bench, blonde with green eyes. She told me that she knew Cindy, with whom I had partied at Crocodile a few days earlier. "My name is Yagna. I'm also a painter." It was obvious that the girl was interested in me. "If you like, I'll show you some more pictures." After she nodded in agreement, I took her to our basement storage. She had by then caught my drift. Yagna's hair, I remembered, smelled of autumn. We saw each other for 3 days. I would have been pleased to go on seeing her, but she decided to bring her paintings to the BARBAKAN, and she did not have an ounce of talent. In October, the leaves began to fall from the trees, and the weather turned cold. I caught the flu and had to stay home for a couple of days. When I returned, Nalivaiko could not contain his excitement. An American actor, he said, with a dimple in his chin, the one who had played the lead in Spartacus, had come to see the show. He paid in rubles for one of my pictures. He had been visiting family in Russia. "His name is Kirk Douglas." Another celebrity who visited the BARBAKAN was a slim man with quick eyes by the name of Harold Schoenberg. After examining my canvases for a long time, he sat down on a bench and noted something on his writing pad. Then he walked up to a painting done in browns and reds, ran his hand over its surface, and nodded in approval. "You must be Mr. Kupczynski." "How do you know?" Ignoring my question, he asked my age. How long had I been painting? Where was I born? Where I had studied, and whether I had been abroad? I answered these questions patiently while he took notes. Then he got up from the bench to again look at the brown and red picture. "How much?" After we agreed on a price, he selected another painting, which was a bit smaller, an abstraction in blues. Then he paid in American dollars, shook my hand, and told me, "I'm going to write about you in the New York Times." Schoenberg's article there, "Old Walls and New Art," spoke, mostly in superlatives, about a wild boy, Zbigniew Kupczynski, and his gang, who were shaking up the art scene behind the Iron Curtain. Afterwards, articles about the crazy young artists who dared to paint abstraction in defiance of the communist school of socialist realism began to appear regularly in the Western press.